never told you how many gods once walked this earth. They never told you their names, their stories, their thunder, their laws. They never told you that before cathedrals crowned the skies and before books declared one truth, Africa already knew the heavens by name. Africa already spoke to the stars, called the wind by its spirit, poured libation to the fire and the flood, and shaped entire kingdoms around the breath of the divine. But then came the silence, thick, heavy, and strategic. They buried the gods beneath ash and doctrine. They turned the sacred into superstition. And they taught the children of Africa to forget what their ancestors had once whispered into firelight. But the gods were not lost. They were hidden, covered in dust, locked inside the bones of griots, carried in the memory of grandmothers, buried in proverbs and lullabies. They did not die. They waited. And today, one by one, we will remember them. You know some names: Ogun, Sango, Olodumare. You may have heard whispers of Mawu, of Yamaya, of Shango. But there are others, ancient, powerful, shrouded in silence. Gods who shaped time before clocks. Gods who created death and then transcended it. Gods who live in the wind and the river, in the rage of battle and the silence of dreams. Gods who walked between stars and storm clouds, who birthed twins of water and flame, who judged empires, and whose names were once too sacred to even be spoken aloud. This is not a history lesson. This is a spiritual excavation. This is the unveiling of 10 of the most powerful African gods you were never taught. Gods who were erased, misunderstood, feared, or mistranslated, but never defeated. These are the gods who still hold power in forgotten prayers. They are not myth. They are memory. They are not fiction. They are force. And when their names are spoken again, the air shifts, as if the world itself is listening. Today we speak their names, one by one, story by story, power by power, from Kemet to the San, from the Shilluk to the Dogon. No filters, no erasure, no silence, just truth. Before the gods of Olympus were carved into stone, before Thor hurled lightning, before Yahweh parted any sea, there was Amun, the hidden one. And when Amun merged with Ra, the sun that never failed, they became Amun-Ra, the breath of creation, the light within light, the visible and the invisible. In Kemet, the land of divine science we now call Egypt, Amun-Ra was not just a god, he was the god, the all, the nothing, the one who spoke before language existed. Amun began in shadows. Unlike other gods who had shrines and statues, Amun was known as the unseen. He was air before it was breath. He was silence before sound. The priests of Karnak whispered his names beneath pillars that reached to the stars, knowing that Amun could not be held in image. But when he merged with Ra, the sun god, the father of light, he became both hidden and seen. The morning sun was his face. The wind was his voice. He rode across the sky in a golden boat, lighting the world, and at night, he traveled the underworld, fighting chaos to be born again by dawn. The people of Kemet did not worship Amun-Ra as a distant being. They walked in his order. They aligned their lives to Ma'at, the divine law of balance that Amun-Ra breathed into existence. Pharaohs bowed to him not just as rulers, but as sons. Temples stretched for miles, not to impress, but to mirror the cosmos. The high priest of Amun was the most powerful man in Egypt, save the pharaoh, and in some periods even more powerful. That is how sacred Amun-Ra was, not because of fear but because of alignment. He was the energy that gave power to all others. But over time his name was buried, stripped of its meaning, reduced to mythology. As new powers rose and the old gods were replaced by foreign faiths, Amun-Ra was folded into textbooks, studied but no longer felt. His temples turned to dust, his breath forgotten. But now, as we remember, something stirs. Because gods like Amun-Ra do not die. They wait. And when you speak his name, not as history, but as memory, the air itself listens. In the ancient kingdom of the Shilluk people, by the flowing veins of the White Nile, there lived a king so powerful, so divine, that his story refused to die. His name was Ni-Kang, not just a ruler, but a force. Not just a man, but a god. His story does not begin with birth and end with death. It begins with exile, war, magic, and power, and it never ends. Because Ni-Kang, to the Shilluk, never truly died. He crossed the river. He ascended. And even now, they say, he lives, watching, guiding, returning. Ni-Kang was born from royal blood but shaped by struggle. His mother was a spirit woman, his father a chief of myth. After a bitter quarrel over succession, Ni-Kang fled his homeland and wandered, crossing rivers, building alliances, conquering enemies not just with the sword but with spirit. Where he walked, power rose. Where he settled, rain returned. Where he ruled, order emerged. He founded the Shilluk kingdom, not just as a monarch, but as the very soul of the land. The people did not follow him out of fear. They followed him because the earth itself responded to his presence. But it was not just his rule that made him divine. It was what happened after. Ni-Kang did not die as ordinary men die. His body vanished into the Nile, and his spirit ascended into myth. From that moment on, the Shilluk did not just bury a king. They inherited a god. Every new king of the Shilluk is seen as an incarnation of Ni-Kang. The coronation is not just a ceremony, it is a ritual resurrection. His spirit enters the body of his successor. His words echo in their mouths. His power lives through their reign. For generations, the Shilluk kings ruled not as individuals, but as vessels of Ni-Kang. In times of war, they called upon him. In times of drought, they offered him libation. And when conflict struck the kingdom, it was said that Ni-Kang would return, riding the wind, walking the riverbanks, rallying his people in spirit form. He was more than ancestor. He was ongoing presence. Yet outside the Shilluk, few know his name. He was never carved into marble. His temples were rivers. His crown was memory. His shrine was the heart of his people. To speak Ni-Kang's name is to remember that not all gods fall from the sky. Some rise from the soil. Some rule from memory. And some never leave at all. Long ago, before humans lost the rhythm of the stars, there was Mulungu, the supreme being in Bantu cosmology. He created the heavens. He shaped the animals. He formed man and woman from the clay of earth and breath of sky. The rivers moved at his command. The sun rose by his design. He did not just create the world, he planted within it a sacred law, a spiritual equilibrium. And for a time all was well. But the peace did not last. As humans grew, so did chaos. Fire, which was once sacred, was misused. Animals were hunted not for survival, but for sport. The people, once in harmony, turned to greed, envy, destruction. They broke the balance. They turned the gift of creation into conflict. And Mulungu, the god who had once walked among them, whose voice once echoed in the trees and winds, withdrew, not in rage, not in vengeance, but in sorrow. It is said that he climbed a great spider's web stretched across the sky, or a sacred rope, or a ladder of flame, and ascended back into the heavens, never to return. And from that moment, the world changed. The god was gone. The prayers grew quieter. The rituals turned to echoes. People began to look up at the sky and wonder why he no longer answered. But Mulungu had not died. He had simply left. In many Bantu traditions, Mulungu remains present, but distant. He watches from above like a silent observer. He no longer intervenes directly. Instead, he sends signs through dreams, through nature, through ancestors. Some say that after creating death, humanity crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Others say he waits for humanity to restore balance before he walks among them again. But all agree on one thing: he is still there. Malungu's story is a cosmic warning, a spiritual mirror. It reminds us that divinity does not shout over chaos. It withdraws. It teaches that creation is not a one-time act, but a responsibility, and that when the sacred is violated, even the gods may turn away. He is not worshipped through grand temples. His altar is the open sky. His presence is felt in the stillness after the storm, in the quiet remorse of the world trying to find its way back. To remember Malungu is to remember the God who gave everything and then left so we could learn the weight of it. To many, Ayo is a festival, a spectacle, a parade of white-robed figures moving through the streets of Lagos beneath towering hats and long flowing robes. The air thick with drumming, the streets alive with movement. Tourists smile, cameras flash, and the city dances. But behind the spectacle lies something deeper, older, sacred, and barely spoken of. Ayo is not just culture. Ayo is a spirit, a presence, a divine being from the spiritual heart of the Ijebu Yoruba tradition, a masked embodiment of transition, of justice, of ancestral return. The figure known as Ayo is not simply a performer. It is an Orisa, a god in white. It appears only during moments of great spiritual significance. When a king dies, when a city mourns, when a gate between worlds must be opened or closed. Ayo does not move for pleasure. Ayo moves for purpose. Every step, every swish of the stick, every silence between the drums is a ritual, a coded communication between this world and the next. Ayo is the spirit of passage. When a powerful elder or ruler dies, it is Ayo who clears the path between the land of the living and the land of the dead. It leads the soul to the ancestors. It marks the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new one. But Ayo also comes to warn. It comes when balance must be restored, when order must be reaffirmed. The white garments do not symbolize peace alone. They symbolize the purity of judgment. Each Ayo wears a distinct hat representing a different ancestral house. Each carries a staff known as Opambata, not for violence but for correction. If struck, it is not a punishment of pain, but a reminder to behave with spiritual order. Women are not to wear head coverings that compete with Ayo's hat. No motorcycle may move while Ayo walks. No one dares challenge the procession, for to interrupt it is to interrupt spirit in motion. What many do not realize is that the Ayo masquerade is a divine visitation, a moment when gods walk again. The masked figures are not men, they are vessels. And once adorned in full regalia, they no longer speak. They are no longer human, they are Ayo. But in a world that turns sacred ritual into tourist attraction, Ayo's deeper meaning fades. The spirit is not angered. It waits. It watches. And when the drums return to their full purpose, when the silence of transition is honored once more, Ayo will reveal its full power again. To know Ayo is to know that not all gods wear faces. Some wear masks. Not to conceal truth, but to protect it. To the Sera people of Senegal and the Gambia, Rug is the source of all things. The breath behind the stars, the rhythm beneath the soil, the voice inside silence. Rug is not just a god. Rug is the god. Yet to describe Rug is to immediately fall short, because Rug is beyond description, beyond gender, beyond form, beyond even understanding. Rug is creation itself, not as an event, but as an eternal process. In Sera belief, the divine is not something to be controlled, named freely or casually discussed. Rug is approached with humility, through ritual, through reverence, and always with the understanding that no one truly knows the whole of Rug. Unlike many traditions where gods take on physical forms, thunder, fire, sky, Rug is all of them, and none. Rug is male and female, sky and earth, light and shadow. Rug created not only the world, but the rules of existence itself. From Rug came the Pangul, ancestral spirits, intermediaries, guardians of land and lineage. Through the Pangul, humans receive guidance. But even they cannot contain Rug. They carry only pieces. Rug is also deeply moral. Serer spirituality is not based on fear of punishment, but on the weight of cosmic balance. To act unjustly is not to offend Rug, but to misalign with the order Rug set into motion. This is why Serer ethics emphasize community, truth, and spiritual responsibility. You cannot bribe Rug. You cannot manipulate Rug. You can only align or fall out of harmony and face the consequences of imbalance. Even Rug's name is treated with sacred caution. Among the elders, it is often whispered or substituted with titles. The idea is not fear, but reverence, an acknowledgement that to speak the name of the divine is to touch lightning with your tongue. Rug is not distant. Rug is present in all things, the movement of wind, the cry of a newborn, the silence after a storm. But Rug is also veiled, hidden from ego, unreachable by arrogance. Rug is the divine paradox, always near, never held, always present, never possessed. To speak of Rug is to sit at the edge of mystery and accept that the sacred cannot always be understood. It can only be honored, and so the Serer honor, through song, through rite, through silence. To know Rug is to remember. The divine does not need to explain itself. It simply is. Among the Baganda people of present-day Uganda, there is a name that rides on the breath of warriors, Kibuka. He is not merely remembered as a god. He is remembered as a brother, a protector, a warrior of the skies who once descended to fight alongside his people. Kibuka's story is not one of distant power or cosmic detachment. It is a story of loyalty, betrayal, and divine vengeance. Of a god who did not sit above war, but entered it. The legend begins with a kingdom under threat. The Baganda were at war, and their enemies grew bold. In desperation, the mortal king turned to the heavens for help. Kibuka, brother to Mukasa, the god of the lakes, heard the call and descended. Armed with divine weapons and shielded by wind, Kibuka hovered above the battlefield, striking down enemies from the sky. No arrow could touch him. No blade could reach him. Victory was swift. The people rejoiced. But the enemy was cunning. They sent a beautiful woman, a spy, into the Baganda camp. She gained favor, earned trust, and discovered Kibuka's location. One night, as he rested among mortals, she revealed the secret. A poisoned spear flew. Kibuka fell. His death was not silent. The sky wept. Storms rolled across the land. The wind screamed his name. The people, shattered by grief, returned his body to the mountain. And there, the earth swallowed him. But death could not hold a god. Kibuka ascended, wounded but eternal. And from that day, he was no longer a warrior of the battlefield. He became a god of vengeance, a spirit of sky and storm, protector of justice, and punisher of betrayal. To this day, Baganda warriors invoke his name. Farmers offer him beer at sacred trees. His shrine lies atop a mountain, and his spirit is said to descend when injustice takes root. He does not speak often. He does not forgive easily. He watches. And when the balance is broken, his wind returns. Kibuka reminds us that gods can bleed, that even the divine can be betrayed. But he also teaches that divinity does not vanish in tragedy. It transforms. It evolves. Kibuka is no longer a soldier. He is now a force of memory, of wrath, of sacred order. To call his name is to summon the sky. To honor him is to never betray those who fight for you. In the vast and intricate cosmology of the Yoruba people, there exists a deity unlike any other. Not a god of thunder or water, but a god of intelligence itself. Ifa. He is not just a spirit. He is the map of the universe, the voice of reason, the guardian of destiny, the keeper of divine knowledge written not in ink, but in vibration. To know Ifa is not merely to worship, it is to decode existence. Ifa is the oracle, the knower, the divine mind. Through him flows all wisdom, the past, the present, the future. Before a soul is born, it kneels before Ifa. In that moment, the soul chooses its destiny, its challenges, its gifts. And it is Ifa who records it, seals it, guards it. This is why in Yoruba belief, destiny is not accidental. It is designed, with purpose, with precision. But once on earth, the soul forgets. And so it must return to Ifa, through ritual, through divination, to remember. But Ifa does not speak in simple words. He speaks in patterns, in proverbs, in verses called Odu. There are 256 sacred combinations, each with layers of meaning, each a door to deeper truth. When a diviner, a babalawo, calls upon Ifa, he is not guessing. He is aligning. He is interpreting the sacred code, using sacred tools. Palm nuts, a divination chain, ancient chants. Each reading is a map, a glimpse into the divine archive. Ifa is more than prophecy. He is balance. He is moral order. He teaches not just what will happen, but what must be done to restore harmony. A reading is not fate cast in stone. It is an opportunity, a chance to realign, to prevent disaster, to fulfill one's highest path. That is a gift of Ifa, not control, but clarity. Outside the Yoruba world, Ifa has often been misunderstood, dismissed as mysticism, feared as voodoo, but Ifa is not superstition. Ifa is spiritual technology. It is a science of the soul. Its logic is older than empires, deeper than doctrine. And across the diaspora, in Brazil, in Cuba, in Trinidad, in the United States, Ifa still speaks. He has never stopped speaking, because as long as there are questions, Ifa will have answers. To invoke him is not to ask. It is to listen. In the wisdom of the Akan people of Ghana, creation is not just an act. It is a continuum, a cycle of breath that never ends. And at the heart of that breath is Odumankoma, the infinite creator, the one who created not only the world, but also the very concept of creation. His name means the inexhaustible one, and for good reason. He did not simply bring forth stars and sky. He created death, and then he conquered it. Odumankoma is not a god confined to temples or statues. He is the source that lives through all things, through time, through transformation, through rebirth. In Akan cosmology, there are three major aspects of divinity: Nyame, Onyankopon, and Odumankoma. But it is Odumankoma who begins all things. He gave breath to the other aspects. He breathed life into the universe before even the gods had form. And when he created death, as a necessary balance to birth, he also ensured that creation itself would never die. For Odumankoma, death is not an ending. It is a return, a recalibration of the soul's journey. And so, in one of the oldest stories told by Akan priests, Odumankoma himself dies, not in defeat, but to demonstrate the cycle he created. His body passes, but his spirit lives, merging into Nyame, continuing his work through every act of existence. He becomes immortal, not by avoiding death, but by passing through it and emerging more powerful. This makes Odumankoma one of the most profound deities in all of African spirituality. He is not just a creator of life. He is the creator of life, death, and the divine force that transcends them both. His essence exists in every breath we take, every heartbeat, every child born, every seed sprouted from the earth. All are echoes of Otomankoma's eternal rhythm. Yet his name is rarely known beyond Akan lands, forgotten by those who speak only of simpler gods, overshadowed by colonial efforts to replace African divinity with imported systems. But Otomankoma does not need temples or books. He is felt. He is the whisper in the womb, the wind after morning, the pulse in the soil. To know Otomankoma is to understand that creation never ends. It evolves. Death is not a full stop. It is a divine comma in the sentence of existence. And the one who wrote that sentence still writes today. In the harsh, beautiful expanse of the Kalahari and its surrounding lands, the Khoikhoi and Sand people told stories that shimmered like mirages. Stories not of static gods, but of beings that danced between forms, defied labels, and taught through mystery. Among them is Tsui'goab, a god of power and paradox, both protector and punisher, trickster and teacher, a spirit of sky and earth who shifts as the world shifts. Tsui'goab is unlike any god in the classical pantheons. He is not always noble, not always kind, but he is always necessary. His stories are layered with wisdom, hidden behind humor, cloaked in contradiction. Sometimes he is old, sometimes young, sometimes he heals, sometimes he destroys, but only to awaken. He walks through dreams, sends visions through the wind, and teaches humans not with commandments, but with choices. He is the enemy and the brother of Ganab, the god of death. In one of the most sacred stories, Tsui'goab and Ganab battle for the fate of the people. They fight with the power of storm and fire, clashing for days. Tsui'goab wins, but is wounded. His blood stains the land, and from that wound, sacred springs begin to flow. Water in the desert, life where there was none. His pain becomes blessing. His battle becomes creation. But Tsui'goab does not live in temples. He lives in the land, in the lightning that splits the sky, in the whisper of dry grass, in the stories passed from elder to child beside fires older than time. He appears in visions to shamans, the Gawasi, and reveals truths in symbols, riddles, and echoes. He teaches that spirit is not fixed. It moves. That wisdom is not given. It is earned. Colonial missionaries could not make sense of Tsui'goab. He did not fit their dichotomies of good and evil. He was too unpredictable, too wild. So they erased him, labeled him a trickster, and dismissed him. But among his people, his name still carries thunder. He is the one who turns sand into water, the one who fights death not with perfection, but with perseverance. To know Tsui'goab is to accept that divinity is not always clean, that gods, like life, are messy, changing, real. He is not here to be worshipped blindly. He is here to be understood, piece by piece, story by story, spirit by spirit. In the sacred cosmology of the Dogon people of Mali, the universe began not with fire, but with water. Not with a singular god, but with divine twins, the Nommo. They are not easily defined. They are spirits, beings, ancestors, symbols, teachers. They are at once masculine and feminine, fish and human, sky and sea. They descended from the heavens not to rule, but to restore, to bring back the harmony that had been shattered in the beginning of time. The story begins with Amma, the great creator. Amma formed the cosmos with vibration, balance, duality. But when one of his early creations broke the sacred order, acting alone, violating cosmic law, Amma sent the Nommo to correct it. They came from the sky, bringing with them water, law, language, and rhythm. They were not just deities. They were the breath of order, the blueprint for human life, culture, and spiritual alignment. The Dogon described Nommo as amphibious beings, part fish, part spirit. They do not walk, they swim. They are said to have arrived in a great ark from the sky, bringing not just themselves, but the knowledge of agriculture, astrology, medicine, and speech. They taught humans how to live in rhythm with the universe, how to honor the spirits, how to balance the seen and unseen. One Nommo sacrificed himself, dismembered, torn apart, and scattered. From his body the world was restored, and from his death came rebirth. This myth mirrors a deeper truth, that destruction can lead to healing. That sacrifice is not loss, but transformation. The Dogons say that Nommo will return again, in spirit and vision, perhaps even in form, to realign the world when it once again falls out of order. For centuries, the Dogon have kept these stories not in temples, but in their architecture, their art, their oral traditions. Western scientists were stunned by the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, only confirmed by modern telescopes in the 20th century. But the Dogon were not surprised. They said Nommo told them. Nommo is not worshipped with fear, but with reverence. They are the blueprint of duality, order, rebirth. Their presence reminds us that chaos is never final. It is the beginning of a new cycle. To know Nommo is to know that the gods don't just live in heaven. Sometimes they rise from the water, carrying the stars in their wake. These gods were never gone. Amun-Ra, Nikang, Mulungu, Eyo, Rug, Kibuka, Ifa, Otomankoma, Tsui'goab, Nommo. Their stories are not relics of a forgotten past. They are blueprints. They are echoes. They are the sacred names that still live in the bones of the earth and in the bloodlines of their children. What was stolen was not just culture. It was connection. Not just names, but the language of the divine. The rhythm, the symbols, the altars that taught us how to walk in alignment with the universe. They never left. It was us who were taught to forget, taught to fear what our ancestors once honored, taught to mock the wisdom that once built kingdoms, healed the sick, predicted the stars, and kept the soul in balance. The gods were turned into myths, our spirits into shadows. But memory cannot be killed. It can only be hidden. And now, one by one, the names are rising again. On tongues, in dreams, in stories, and drums. To remember them is not just to reclaim history. It is to reclaim power. Not the power to dominate, but the power to understand. To live in rhythm with life, death, creation, and return. These gods remind us that there was never one way to reach the divine. Africa knew thousands, and each god, from the masked to the shape-shifting, the wounded to the all-knowing, teaches us something sacred. That spirit does not belong in one temple. It lives in all things. So say their names. Speak them with reverence. Share their stories. Pass them forward, not as museum tales, but as living truth. Because as long as we remember, they remain. If this journey awakened something in you, like this video, share it, subscribe, speak the names, and let the world know the gods of Africa were never lost, only buried, and now they rise.